County Mayo records measurable rainfall on 193 days of the average year. That figure comes directly from Met Éireann, defined as any day receiving at least 1 millimetre of rain. And it means that across a typical year, rain falls on more days than it does not. A statistic that would sound like a punchline anywhere else in the world, and sounds, to the roughly 1,042 people who actually live there according to the 2022 census, simply like Tuesday. Let me show you why that number does not tell the story most people assume it does. Belmullet sits at the narrow neck of the Mullet Peninsula, a thin finger of land jutting out into the Atlantic on the westernmost edge of County Mayo in a region known as Erris, one of the most sparsely populated and geographically remote parts of the entire country. The town itself is small by any standard, barely more than a single main street, a harbour, and a scattering of surrounding townlands, and it sits close enough to the open ocean that Atlantic weather systems arrive here with almost nothing to slow them down first. No mountain range to intercept the rain before it reaches the town. No sheltered inland position to soften what blows in off the water. Just flat, exposed peninsula, directly in the path of whatever the Atlantic decides to send in any given week. That exposure is exactly what produces the 193 rain days a year. It is also, less obviously, connected to almost everything else that defines life in this part of Mayo, for better and for worse. Here is what the raw statistic misses entirely. 193 days of measurable rain does not mean 193 days of miserable all-day downpour. Much of that rainfall arrives as the kind of quick-moving Atlantic shower that clears within 20 or 30 minutes, followed by bright, clean, wind-scrubbed sunshine of the sort you rarely see in less exposed inland areas. Long-time residents describe the weather here less as constant rain and more as constant change, a pattern where 4 seasons can genuinely pass through a single afternoon, and where checking the sky before leaving the house becomes an automatic habit rather than a source of daily frustration. That habit shapes something deeper than simply what coat people grab on their way out the door. Communities that live with genuinely unpredictable, frequently difficult weather tend to develop a specific kind of mutual reliance that more sheltered, more convenient places rarely need to build. When a fishing boat cannot safely go out, neighbours who work the land help cover for neighbours who work the water, and the reverse holds true when a storm threatens crops rather than boats. Community halls, GA clubs, and local pubs in a town this size and this remote are not simply social nice-to-haves. They function as the actual infrastructure of daily life. The places where information about road conditions, ferry cancellations to nearby islands, and weather warnings circulate faster and more reliably than any official channel could manage on its own. One long-time Erris resident, describing what keeps people rooted to a place with weather this demanding, put it plainly to local media some years ago. You do not choose to live in Belmullet because it is easy. You choose it because everyone around you understands exactly why it is hard, and nobody has to explain themselves to anybody else about it. That kind of shared, unspoken understanding is difficult to manufacture anywhere else, and it is precisely the sort of social bond that tends to erode first in places where life is more comfortable and more anonymous. The remoteness that produces the weather also produces something else worth naming directly. Belmullet and the surrounding Mullet Peninsula sit close to Mullet National Park, one of the largest expanses of intact blanket bog remaining anywhere in Western Europe. A genuinely rare and increasingly protected landscape type that survives largely because this stretch of Mayo was too remote and too agriculturally marginal for centuries of drainage and development pressure to ever fully reach it. The offshore Inishkia Islands, now uninhabited but once home to a thriving fishing community until the 1920s, sit just off the peninsula's western edge. Another reminder that this part of Ireland has always demanded something specific and difficult from the people who chose to stay. Fishing has shaped Belmullet's economy for generations, and it remains one of the town's defining industries today, alongside small-scale farming and a slowly growing tourism sector built around exactly the kind of wild, unfiltered Atlantic landscape that draws visitors willing to trade comfort for genuine remoteness. That tourism growth mirrors a pattern visible right along Ireland's western seaboard, where the very isolation and difficult weather that once suppressed visitor numbers has, over the past decade, become part of the specific appeal for a certain kind of traveller actively seeking distance from more crowded, more predictable destinations further south and east. Here is the honest complication in this story, and it deserves to be said directly. Population figures for Belmullet and the wider Erris region have not been immune to the same rural depopulation pressures affecting other remote parts of the west of Ireland. Young people leaving for education and employment in Dublin, Galway, or further afield remains a real and ongoing pattern. And a difficult climate is, for at least some who leave, one factor among several that makes staying harder to justify against opportunities elsewhere. Nobody serious about this region pretends that the community strength built around difficult weather fully offsets the economic pull factors drawing people towards cities. But the residents who do stay, and the significant number who choose to move here deliberately from elsewhere in Ireland or from overseas, describe something specific and hard to fake when asked why. It is rarely about the number of dry days. It is almost always about the quality of the community that a genuinely remote, genuinely demanding place produces, almost as a byproduct of its own isolation. Difficult places filter for a particular kind of resident, people willing to trade convenience for something less easily measured. And Belmullet, with its 193 rain days and its position at the very edge of the country, has been doing that filtering for a very long time. That is the actual relationship between the weather statistic and the town it describes. The rain is real, constant, and entirely unglamorous in the way it's often talked about elsewhere. But it is also inseparable from the specific, close-knit character of the community it has helped shape over generations. And that trade-off, difficult weather in exchange for a rare kind of belonging, is exactly the one that keeps drawing people to stay, and occasionally to arrive rather than to leave. If this look at one of Ireland's wettest and most remote towns changed how you think about what makes a place worth living in,